Welcome to End of Life University YouTube channel. I'm glad you've joined me here today. Don't forget that this is also a podcast and you can listen to it on any podcast platform where you happen to enjoy podcasts. And you'll find all the archives here on this YouTube channel. They're divided up into playlists according to topic. So search the playlist if there's something special that you're looking for in all these episodes from the past. Also, don't forget to subscribe because you'll get a notification whenever I post a new episode. Today, I'll be sharing with you a rather unique conversation. I have three guests with me today. Susie Hopkins and Hallie Bateman, a mother-daughter pair who are the collaborators on a book called What to Do When I'm Gone. And my own daughter, Gia Snyder, is joining us. So we have two mother-daughter pairs talking all about the mother-daughter relationship and how we deal with anticipatory grief and loss and change and aging as we go through life. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. Today, I'm so excited. This is a really special mother-daughter episode, and I have three guests on my podcast today. First is my daughter, Gia Snyder. She's kind of my co-host, and Gia is a spiritual teacher, a musician, and she is currently in nursing school studying to become an RN, which is amazing. And you can learn more about Gia at her website, divinelygia.com. So welcome, Gia.
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
And then we are joined by another mother-daughter pair, Susie Hopkins. Susie is a retired journalist who worked for four Northern California newspapers, then founded and ran a community magazine based in the Sierra Foothills for 10 years. And Susie's daughter, Hallie Bateman, is also with us, a writer and illustrator based in Los Angeles. Her work has appeared in The New Yorker, The New York Times, Buzzfeed, and many others. Her latest book, Directions, was published in 2021. And today we're going to be talking about a book that Susie and Hallie wrote together, What to Do When I'm Gone, which was released in 2018. So show the book, Gia.
Oh my God, I have my copy too.
Oh, good. Yes. Which is, I'm the only one without one now. And it's an amazing book. I read the book. I cried. I felt like this is the book I wanted to write for my own daughter to leave for her. So I've been so excited that we all got to come together as mothers and daughters talking about your book, but also just about how we go through life together and face the challenges and losses that come with life. So maybe Susie and Hallie, between the two of you, you could tell us how you came to write this book and what inspired you to do that.
Yeah, so the idea began with me. I was in my early 20s and I think I was living at home at the time and was having I remember there was just one sleepless night where I kind of lay awake and was, fantasizing about the deaths of the people I love. Not so much fantasizing, but just like playing out in that way of like anticipatory almost. And that felt sort of familiar, and it feels like this thing that I've felt since I was a kid, like what if kind of feeling. And then what changed about this night was that in my, mental movie, I went beyond the moment of, hearing bad news or just the impact. And I sort of drifted beyond, and it was, okay, so I'm going to lose my mom, and then just playing out, realizing that's not just one moment. My life will go on and she won't be there. And it was so terrifying. And it sounds so obvious, but there was something, so many epiphanies are things that sound really obvious, but they feel different in the moment. And that's what this was. And, before falling asleep, I came up with an idea, and then I pitched it to my mom the next morning over breakfast. I said, Mom, how about this? Like, you write me a book of instructions telling me what to do starting the moment you die, so that I don't have to worry about being, completely without you or something. And she kind of laughed and liked the idea and was like, oh yeah, I already know what I would say, and started rattling off instructions. And it was a very slow process because, then I moved to New York and, was in my 20s, and my mom was publishing a magazine. But I would call her, or whenever we would see each other, I'd just be like, how's that book coming? Like, what's going on? We gotta do this. And she was like, it's in my head. I got it. Don't worry about it. And I was like, I was like, I really need this to exist. And it became clear that it was going to have to be something that we did together, or I don't really know what I didn't know that it was going to be what it became. But what ended up happening was I was living in New York, and my mom was coming to visit me for the first time since I'd moved there, and we decided to go up to Maine and rent a house for a couple days. And I was like, all right, I'm going to bring my laptop and we're going to talk about the book, and kind of, just told my mom that that's what we were going to do. And we wound up starting it there. And that was the genesis. And, I think from that point, it was still, I think the idea had been percolating for like, what, Mom, like 5 years before we even started it, or maybe 3 years. I don't remember, but it's a long time. But yeah, that's kind of the genesis.
And Hallie was increasingly insistent, but I was very, very busy, and the magazine was growing, and it was like swatting a fly to make her stop bugging me about it. But when we sat down at that main cabin and we started talking, it was clear she was going to ask me questions I was simply to answer with my instructions. And as we did it, I still remember like laying in bed one night, and we're doing some questions, and this sense that, wow, what she's asking and what I'm replying with are very universal. It just felt universal to me because I'd interviewed so many people, and a lot of elderly people, and had gone through my mother's death in 2003 and was holding her hand when she died. And so I'd had this world of experience, both my own and related by other people. And I just thought, wow, this is something that everybody should be talking about. And then it really became clear after that trip, I think, Hallie, that we were working on a book where we were just doing a family project. And then as it morphed, we did 2 other kind of week-long writing retreats together for the specific purposes. It became clear it was becoming a book, not like a book that anybody would buy, but it was clearly going to be a book. And that's the amazing part. So those retreats that we took writing together, with Hallie continuing to ask what she wanted, and me trying to kind of extrapolate, okay, I'm gonna die, and what if I die and she's in her, say, mid-30s, and she has to go on and live, what's her experience going to be that I won't be there for? And so I was drawing on, all these, looking at lives of older people and the things that hit you, the loss and the joys that you come across. And so I was just pretending, very kind of clinically, what was ahead for her. And that was how we wrote the book.
Well, as soon as I saw it, as I mentioned, I was just taken with it, even the title of it, because Gia, I think you've even said that to me sometimes after we've had a really heartfelt conversation, things like, what will I do one day without you? And I've always thought that as a mom, when my kids were little, I've always thought, oh, what if I don't have time to teach my kids things I wanted to share with them or to share my wisdom with them? And I was curious if you had thought of it that way yourself, Susie, as a mom.
I didn't think of much. I was busy. I 3 children, and then I started the business, and I was just kind of pedaling fast. And when we took the time out to write the book, you would think that the book is about death and loss, but I did not apply that to myself. I didn't really think I was going to die. This was another journalistic project that I could keep a really terrific distance from. So it was just another writing project that I didn't really immerse in. But we were in a motel room in Oregon writing working on the book in one of our week-long things. And we got to a point where I said, okay, you're going to have your first birthday and I'll be gone. And it's the first one without me. And then for whatever reason, the dam broke for me. And I go, whoa, I really am going to die, because we all know we're going to die, but we don't really necessarily know we're going to die, or we don't integrate it in some way. And I really believe we need to talk about it in order to make it part of our reality. But for me, it really hit at that moment. And I go, oh my God, she's going to be having a birthday that I'm not there for. I'm not making the cake. I'm not I'm not bringing our relationship on this plane. Is done. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. So I think I cried for about 20 minutes on that one. And that was the moment at which the book became much more real to me, I think. And we were much of the way through, and Hallie was starting to sketch. But Hallie, do you remember that?
I definitely do. And I would somewhat take issue with you saying that you had a cold journalistic distance throughout the book. I don't think that at all. I think that
early on, I feel like I was not, in my mind, I wasn't thinking about my actual death. I was thinking about death as a theoretical, it's just like, and it's still, I find it's very hard to say I won't be here someday with you still here, if that's the order in which.
Yeah. No, I do remember that. And I remember it was kind of this big project that as it became more defined, we had made this decision that I think fairly early on had made this decision that the book would be for wider consumption for readers beyond our family, but that we would write it as specific as possible to ourselves. So it's that whole thing of like, there's power in specificity. And so rather than trying to make this blanket advice for every person out there, we really tried to make it about our relationship and the exact questions I had and the exact answers that my mom would have. And I think that as we more and more defined that, it did become a more emotional project, and it became very personal.
And Gia, talk about how you received the book and what your experience was like reading it.
I loved it so much. And my mom sent me a copy so I could review it before this podcast episode. And I just told her I want to keep it because it was so special and so sweet. And I really resonated with the relationship that it seems you two have through the book. It portrays you two having a closeness, and I really have that with my mom too. So it felt like it could have been my mom's own words to me. And I wondered, Susie, how you grieved your own mother's passing, and did that inspire this book in any way? Did you wish that you had some messages from your mom, or what was your experience like?
My mom, I guess it was boy, that's a complicated question. My mom and I had not the close relationship that Hallie and I have, but we had a close relationship, and it was kind of challenging. She was, we grew up in, I had a violent father, alcoholic, and my mom was subject to abuse for about 30 years. And we, 6 kids, we all lived through that environment. And so I had a brother that committed suicide. So my mom had grief after really a kind of a difficult life, and yet was a loving, kind, her children came first. So in the mix of things, with all the difficulties and the trauma of our young life, I knew without a doubt, and this seems like the thing that brought us all through, is that my mom loved us, and there was absolutely no denying it. You know, I knew to my core that she loved me, and that just brought us through to make a better life than, say, our parents did. And my mom died in 2003, and I was with her when she died. And I have to say, it was just a very spiritual experience. And we had hospice come in, and I was a novice on all things about the practical aspects of dying. And they were immensely helpful, and I was able to say goodbye to her in a way that really just felt like a river of memories, which is referenced in the book. So kind of the ending of the book oddly came from my experience with my mom at the exact time of her death.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I resonate with that. My mom died in 2013, and she and I had a really difficult, challenging relationship, and I spent most of our years together being angry at her about various things, and until the very last few weeks of her life. And similarly, we had a really beautiful experience, and like all of that fell away. All the things I'd been upset about went away, and I could just see it was this amazing connection, really, the person who gave birth to you, and realizing like she knows me, and she has known me from the moment I was conceived. Like no other person will know me to that depth in my life. And I'm letting go of that now. And that it was very powerful. And that helped me realize, like, my daughter in particular will probably have an experience like that. I don't know if sons feel it in the same way, but that anyway, I think it's lovely that you've created this book, which helps to prepare for that experience when it happens.
Right. And also it's the lack of talking. We don't talk about death. We just pretend like, if you do enough yoga and you look good in spandex and you stay young forever by collagen injections, everything's fine. But we need to be talking about helping people to embrace the last part of life too.
And I love that the book focuses not so much on the dying itself, but it begins with the moment of death and then talks about how you live afterwards, after someone you care about dies. And it's really a wonderful perspective to focus. How do we carry on when someone else is gone? And so that's also something that we don't talk about very often. We don't talk about that time, what happens after someone dies.
I loved also how many emotions you touched on in the book of, sometimes you just needed to distract yourself and go rollerblading, and sometimes you need to bake and enjoy the sweetness of life, and sometimes you need to cry or reach out to friends. It felt so comprehensive, like allowing the full experience of grief. And I just thought it was so beautiful.
I wanted to mention, Hallie, also your illustrations are amazing. They're absolutely perfect for the book. And so
I want to show one.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want listeners to know. Those of only hearing the audio won't get to see this, but Gia wants to read these pages because this was really special and profound, these couple of pages. So
yeah, this one really touched me. It's day 450. Look in the mirror and see yourself the way I saw you. At times you will forget that you are amazing, and I hate that I'm not there to remind you. because someday you will be old and you will look back at pictures of yourself and you will see I was beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm.
Really touching, but just the illustrations, the words, it's just so perfect together, very evocative.
I
Thank you.
wondered, Hallie, if you found that the writing of this book has brought you more peace now.
Yeah, yes and no. I think really yes, I feel incredibly like that feeling, that urgency with which I was calling my mom and saying, "Hey, we need to write this book." Um, we did it, you know, and I do feel incredibly relieved and grateful because I think in my initial mind, you know, my initial idea, I just thought, my mom will write me a booklet that I'll tuck away, and it'll be this kind of backup piece for me to turn to. And the fact that the idea was able to expand and to be something to share with other people, like even just hearing you read those pages was like, I kind of teared up because I don't know. Yeah, there's something very, very special about talking about it out in the open, and that it's not just a booklet that I secretly tuck away for the sad day or something. That the fact that it's become a topic of discussion in, you know, on our book tour, and, you know, we hear from readers regularly, and having conversations like this is what's, I mean, the book is absolutely something that I'm grateful to be able to turn to, but just also just the act of being able to talk about it and having this book as a touchstone for, as a reminder that other people feel the same way and other people have the same need to talk and to process, and in my mind, like, prepare, like, why not? We all know that this is part of life, and so to act like it's not until it's already happened feels that, I don't know, it's just it feels like some sort of denial, and that there's this like breath of relief and fresh air of like, we're not denying it, we wrote a whole book about it and we talk about it, and it's yeah, I think that the gift is that conversation. And there's definitely been moments where I've called my mom and been like, Mom, I still worry about this, like I thought this would go away. And I think that that's also that's part of life. You love someone, and you know, that's always scary because you have something to lose, because it's beautiful to love someone, and those things go hand in hand.
I think there's something too about, at least I feel this way, one of the aspects of living to be in your 60s is realizing you've been through a lot of life. I mean, and experienced lots of different things, ups and downs in life. And that it's nice to have the perspective that actually, like, I've learned some things that maybe they'll be helpful. Maybe they'll be helpful to younger people to hear what I've learned and what it was like to go through those things. And in so many ways, I feel like in our society, we don't really value the wisdom of our elders. We don't ask them questions. We don't listen to them. We don't pay attention to what they've learned, and what a tremendous loss that is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, oh, sorry, Susie.
Oh no, that's just so true.
Yeah, and I love that your humor really shone through in the book. But I also noticed that you have so much wisdom from reading these passages, and I wondered if you could speak to what challenges or life experiences you've had that have brought that wisdom forward.
Wow. A lot. A lot. That's why when you're in your 60s, you look back and a lot. You know, losing my brother was a big loss. And so I think the the big losses, far more than the big, you know, career accomplishments or whatever, the big losses are where you really learn and grow, in even though you don't necessarily want those losses at all, but it opens doors and that otherwise you wouldn't have gone in that direction. And that this book has done that for us. And I think interviewing people, I've mentioned that I've interviewed a lot of elderly people, and I've sat by the bedside of somebody. I interviewed people in their hundreds up. I think the oldest was 104, which is one of the best,
Wow.
best people I've been. Very lively 104-year-old. And I've made a woman in her late 90s cry by just mentioning her mother. Tell me about your mother. So, you know, that's, it's a powerful bond. And I think for me, interviewing people and seeing, because I did a lot of World War II veteran interviews, and they've experienced a lot of trauma. And so people who've suffered, which is everyone, but some people have had great suffering and come through it. And there's a tremendous encouragement in knowing what you're able to get through, and that this is not the end of the world. You're not, this is a part of your path. And this is part of your learning, which hopefully you're open to and continues as you get older. So, and this has been one of the neatest things about the book is on our book tour, which we did a bit in New York and a bit in California. People in the audience really embrace the idea of my mom or dad doesn't want to really talk about these things, but I'm going to take the book and try to open the door to that. And so one of the greatest joys about this is Hallie and I agree that people need to talk about death and dying more, and about really, because it allows you to talk about living more fully right now, right? If we understand that time is limited, which it is. And so those conversations that we heard about people excited because they really did, and many young people, they wanted to know what their parent would say. And in many cases, their parent was closed off, but they thought maybe I can use this as a way to say, they talked about these issues, I'd like to as well. And to me, that was one of the, and continues to be one of the great beauties of in my life for having put out the book. The greatest satisfaction has been in people saying, I talked to my mom, she didn't want to tell me about this, but she agreed to, because I said it was very important to me. So that's just been one of those delights that I never expected.
And I wanted to say the book is so accessible. It's so easy to read because it's not overly wordy, you know, and because it's fully illustrated, every single page. And as again, I'll say it again, the illustrations are amazing and wonderful. And so you simply look at the page and it evokes emotion right in the moment as you're reading those words and looking at the illustration. So I think it's a great conversation starter, because someone could thumb through and find a page just like the one you read, Gia, and read it to a loved one and say, how do you feel about that? What was this kind of experience like for you?
And Hallie we did a postcard, which I have copies of, but we, at some point, Hallie, maybe you'll remember better, during the book tour, we created a list of questions that the reader could ask their parents, just very general conversation starters. So that's not in the book, but it was great because we gave those out for people to share.
Yeah, and we can share those questions with you. I can send you a link if you want to share. But yeah, the idea of this book as a conversation starter was a big part of the motivation and why a graphic book felt so right, because when you're grieving and you open a book that's like blocks of text, like I can really imagine how difficult it would be to say, all right, I'm gonna read 200 pages of text right now and try to absorb that in this moment. And you know, part of why I'm an artist is that I I really love how much can be felt through and captured through illustration, and combining that with writing is some sort of magic that really just to me like is so emotionally impactful. And yeah.
Yeah, your magic together is it shines through in the book. Just your illustrations, Hallie, your writing, Susie, just the collaboration was so beautiful. And I hope you'll do more projects together because it was a special formula.
Thank
And
you.
I wondered if maybe after writing the book, do you find that your time together that you spend together now is different in any way? Does it feel like you're more intentional or more present, or is it easy to kind of take things for granted when you have time together?
I'll speak to that. Well, firstly, I kind of want to answer a little bit the question before about where my mom's wisdom comes from, just because having been literally raised by Susie Hopkins, my mom does not shy from the hard subjects. And while so much of the wisdom I think is gathered, Mom, by your speaking with old people and putting yourself in places where, you know, people normally shy away from, that's also because you sought that out and you wanted to shine a light on it. And I think growing up and throughout my whole life, I've experienced, you know, this journalistic sensibility of let's kind of cut through the bullshit. And I think that's been, I mean, obviously enormously formative of who I am. And I think that's something that is just innate in my mom, is like this desire to strip away artifice and to connect with truth and kind of like depth and humor. And it's, you know, a lot of our like entire family's like sense of humor is this sort of, it can be kind of dark, but there's this like glee in the fact that we can make dark jokes with each other in our family. And being able to do that is because we talked about death at the dinner table. We talked about those things openly, and yeah, we laughed. Like that was always a part of it. And me even bringing up this idea to my mom, I brought it to her because it was no big deal to bring it to her. It was no big deal to say, hey, you're super gonna die someday. Like, let's talk about that. And it's that our collaboration is so unique because she raised me and taught me to not shy from those things, and to that it's okay. And then so for me to be able to in turn say, let's write this book, and then, you know, the writing and the art. And I think to segue into your next question about does it feel different, I think that we've always been close. And I think the book has, I think the experience of writing it just sort of, for me, was this education in like, I can pretty much say anything to my mom. And even like when we were working on it, I was definitely a brat, and I was, you know, I was insecure, and I was, you know, at times like not the greatest collaborator. I was like, this book isn't going to sell, it's not going to work. And my mom was like, yeah, it is, it's going to be great. And I was like, no, it's not. And so for me to experience my mom seeing all those sides of me and being like, whatever, it's gonna sell, it's gonna be fine, get off me. Like, not, my mom has this like amazing ability to be like, I don't know, we can really say anything to each other, critique each other, and that it just feels very safe. So I think that has been strengthened and reaffirmed by the process of working on the book.
Yeah. And I wanted to say, I think it is maybe your journalistic approach to the truth in a way, Susie, that causes you to just drill down on all of these universal concepts and universal experiences, which is why all the rest of us can relate to it so well, to what you wrote about and what you said in the book.
Yeah, it's definitely, the journalism is part of it, but as Hallie was giving that, answering that question, it just occurred to me that, and I don't think about this very often, but my entire childhood, I grew up in a family where bad things happened and it was never spoken of. It was all the stuff that was happening in our home. And I from a very young person go, why isn't anyone talking about this? Why isn't this being brought in? And it was a cone of silence over really terrible things that affected, everybody in the family. So I really came into my teen years going, well, I'm going to talk about everything. Not necessarily within my family, but out. And I think that's what drew me to journalism, because I could take a lens to anything without, and before my mom died, I interviewed her because she had nothing else to do. She was kind of like in bed, and she was fine with it, and revealed all these family secrets that she had never. And I go to my siblings and say, that mom said this today. Did you ever hear that she married our dad after meeting him on a sidewalk, and then he dropped her back after the wedding at the frat house or at the sorority house within the night after they married, and then she didn't tell her parents for the year? And my siblings said, no, we never heard that. That's the cone of silence. So everything about me just says, this is ridiculous. This is why somebody in their 90s has carried grief for decades. That shouldn't happen. We need to talk about it and deal with it and move through these things. And that, so my approach to parenting was, A, my kids aren't going to grow up scared, and B, we're going to talk. And that is, you just hate to think that somebody has to live their life by hiding secrets and bearing shame and bearing grief. And they've lost all that beautiful time that they could have had for free of those burdens. So that's the deep, dark background for why I was a talkie parent.
I can relate to what you just said with my mom. I had like some really profound conversations and experiences in the last few weeks of her life, but the thought that it took all those years and we had to wait till the very end before we could get to that place where she could really talk to me about certain things, that felt very tragic. I'm so grateful that we had that time, but to think, and I guess I'm a similar parent to you, of wanting to just be able to talk about things and bring things up. I don't know, Gia, you can attest to that.
Yeah, we have a very open family, and I appreciate how much I've been allowed to just speak my mind and share my emotions and be myself. And I think the four of us are really blessed to have such strong mother-daughter relationships. I think it's actually really special and probably rare. I know a lot of people who aren't that close with their moms or have lost their moms already. And I wondered if you've had any feedback from people who read the book who maybe they already lost their mom, or they don't feel like they could get this type of wisdom, and maybe Susie's words could be a mothering guidance for them. Have you heard any stories like that?
Lots, yeah. Hallie, I'm thinking of the lady in is it Taiwan?
Oh yeah, this was a recent kind of cool interaction with a reader. We heard from, I got an email from her husband, and he said, hello, my wife loved your book so much, and she actually started making her own book with her mom and interviewing her mom and illustrating her mom's words, and she is too nervous to tell you because she doesn't want to feel like she's ripping off your idea. And he shared some of her artwork, and it was incredibly gorgeous. Beautiful. And we, of course, we were like crying, and we're like, this is incredible. Like, you know, she absolutely, it's not ripping off this thing. If every parent and child could have even, you know, a piece of an interaction like this where you can ask those questions and process them, I mean, there'd be as many books as there are people. And so we ended up having a bit of a back and forth with her, and I shared some of her artwork, and I linked to her Instagram on my own, and that was really incredible to see, and just a amazing, even cross-cultural, the universality of the subject was really like highlighted, and just like, wow, for this book and this concept to be able to reach someone on the other side of the world, and for us to feel so, I don't know, connected to that was incredibly special.
That's amazing. And I could see, I mean, I wonder how many hundreds or thousands of of books are out there. Are people writing for themselves, asking questions and writing down the answers?
Yeah, I think that we've heard from all kinds of readers. Some of them are like, this is incredible, I'm doing this with my parent. As you mentioned, we've absolutely heard from people who I even have close friends who are like, I can't relate to this at all. Like, I don't have a mom like this. This isn't the type of relationship. But, you know, even as we were working on the book, we thought about that, and we thought, this is sort of a mom in a book. This is a piece of that. And I think that there's been a lot of ways the book has been received that we couldn't have ever imagined. There's been, you know, people who have turned to it when they lost a pet. There's been people who've turned to it for all sorts of loss, old, new, you know. It's just sort of about, I think it really comes down to anyone you love, working through loss of anyone you love. And it's been cool to learn the extent of that. And at the same time, I got a message last week from a woman who sent the book to her mom, and her mom became very upset and was very offended, and, you know, didn't want anything to do with that. And she wrote me about that, and I just said, you know, I'm sorry, and that happens, and people are incredibly afraid to acknowledge death. And I think there's a lot that comes up for people around grief that maybe, you know, even their children can't quite anticipate. My experience with grief is mostly imaginary. Like, when I'm hearing from people, I often will call my mom and talk through how to respond, because I haven't lost a parent. I haven't had an incredibly earth-shaking loss. I've thought about it. I'm very scared of it. But, you know, there's just this world of, you know, I imagine when that woman gave the book to her mom, I don't know, that maybe things were brought up that the daughter can't comprehend, and it's hard to penetrate through that stuff.
And I have friends, a surprising number of women friends who had really tortured relationships with their mom, really bad relationships. And in a way, that's a loss unto itself. And I have some who are so estranged that the mom is dead to them because of abuse or other issues, you know. We also have heard from readers about that. But to me, that is a loss. Even if the person is living, the loss is that you wish you had a mom that had that unconditional love for you, and that's as basic as it gets. And it's very sad. And we had readers in the that attended on the book tour that some of them had that experience, and I think it also oddly reaches somebody there when they understand that is a loss, even if the mom, the biological mom, is still living. You've lost something in life that you wish you had.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate that the book doesn't cover, say, here's 6 months after someone dies and what you do while you're grieving. The book goes on for an entire lifetime because that's how loss really is. It doesn't just come to an end. We don't just stop grieving. We carry the loss with us all of our lives. And the book does such a good job of revealing that and showing us that at all of our various ages and stages of life, we will still be carrying the loss with us.
One thing I wanted to talk about was the page that said, "These are signs that I'm visiting you from another realm." And I think they were like clouds that looked familiar, and maybe it was a dragonfly flying in circles or something. And I wanted to share that my mom and I this is really silly. Oh yeah, there it is.
There it is. Yeah.
Congregations and Bluebirds.
Yeah. I'll just read it really quick. Yeah. Other signs, I'm visiting you from the other realm. Dragonflies flying in circles, ladybugs landing on your arm, rainbows, congregations of bluebirds, clumps of clouds that look familiar, spots on rhododendron leaves, also a sign of plant disease. So
that is so sweet. And I wanted to say, I don't know how we came up with this, but my mom and I just decided the other day that one of our signs will be cheeseburgers. And I think it's because she had texted me a cheeseburger emoji. Was it incidental, Mom, or did you intend to text the cheeseburger?
Let's say I intended to.
Well, it was a happy accident that led to us deciding cheeseburgers will be one of our signs, that when one of us is in the spirit realm, we will send a cheeseburger. Or maybe if we're grieving, we'll go eat a cheeseburger to think of the other one.
That'll be our thing.
And I love that. I love that so much.
Among other things, I'm sure will remind us of each other. And my mom and I are both really spiritual, so that's a conversation that feels comfortable to us. Like, oh, you'll be in the spirit realm, and we'll stay.
Yeah.
And you know, not everybody maybe has a belief system that supports that, but I wondered for you two, do you have that spiritual connection together? And were any of your signs from the other realm, did you have special stories about them, or did you just kind of create them for the book?
Mom, I think that was something that kind of came from you, and I think that your experience with your own mom was something that sort of inspired that. Am I correct?
Yeah, it doesn't feel dramatic, but it felt very real. I mean, it wasn't a dramatic story, but I had a couple dreams after my mom died, and it was just, she was just there. It just felt that she was really there. And when the book was complete, but the editor, whose name is Nancy, said, you know, it needs an ending. And so I just sort of, it trailed off, and I guess she needed an actual ending. So I went to bed one night and I'm going, gosh, I got to go to work in the morning. I asked my mom, and just, you know, right before I went to sleep, you know, if you can, you know, give me an ending here. And she gave me an ending at 3 a.m. I woke up, and it was that moment and the ending of the book says that basically you're going, well, maybe you can read it, Hallie. But my mom gave that to me because as she died, back in 2003, I was swept up in all I can describe as a spiritual kind of whirlwind of memories. And it was almost like I could see it, but I was in it. And it was just the most spiritual experience I've ever had. And those memories went through many years and many emotions. And then she passed. And that was over a period of maybe 10 minutes or so. And that was the time of her passing. And the ending of the book, which I guess Hallie can read, really reflected that. And I went to bed and she gave me the ending and I wrote it. And it's about 4 sentences. And it needed to be right because Hallie and I had vowed that everything had to be honest to what I would actually say to all 3 of my children. It's predicated on a mother-daughter, but the advice really is for my kids. So anyway, my mom gave me the ending, which I appreciated. So you want to read that?
That is so cool.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It was overwhelming going through it. I just, sometimes you just acknowledge, I don't understand what's happening, but here I am. And that's kind of a beautiful reference for if we could just be that way all the time, right? Like present and not in the past or worried about what's ahead.
Exactly. Oh, that's beautiful.
I like to share. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I can read it if
you
want.
Read it.
I don't think this is really a book where spoilers are an issue. In fact, it has been your show all along, long before the day I died. Even though it comforts you to get my advice, and trust me, I have no shortage of it, you already know all the answers. In fact, you don't really need this book. I was happy to write it with you, but you don't need it. You already have what it takes to carry on without me. You already have it within you to face what's ahead. The infinite river of memories we shared still connects us. Let that river flow over you and through you, carrying you forward and beyond.
So beautiful. Yeah.
I just wanted to share a quote from a friend of mine who a couple years ago lost her mom to suicide. And she said, this was from her Instagram post. She said, "Grief is the transition period from when we're able to connect to our loved ones in human form to when we're able to connect with them in spirit." So it's almost just this transition phase of feeling the loss of this human, but then maybe grief experience, it shifts and there's a healing that takes place when we can develop a connection with our loved one in spirit, and that maybe there's a whole new life there, there's a whole new realm of connection there. And I just think that's so cool, like maybe sending each other signs and seeing each other in dreams, that could be a whole new level of connection with our loved one on the other side.
That's a lovely way to look at it.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Well, on a lighter note, mostly because we brought up cheeseburgers, I wanted to mention that there are recipes in the book, or excuse me, at least instructions for making certain dishes, which I loved. I've already made the curry and the fajitas from your book, using your book as a guide, which was, and they were really wonderful. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about food as being part of the memories that we share and our stories together involving food. And I thought it was really special that you decided to include certain recipes in the book.
Yeah, and some of those were from, that I grew up with. When you get to chicken and dumplings, well, I grew up in farm country, right? the hearty food, and my mom was mostly a single mom without a lot of money, but she really knew how to put a bunch of stuff in one pot and make it come out pretty well. And I had a lot of memories around food growing up, and love to garden, love cooking with kids. And so my kids were cooking was a big part of how we related. And I look back on my mom raising 6 kids with hardly any money. And one of the memories that I had talked about recently with my siblings was she'd make donuts. And then the boys, there's 4 boys and 2 girls, and donuts were pretty cheap to make. And she'd put them out on a freezer top on newspaper, and they would cycle in and race through the house and just grab them before she could stop anybody. So she was just a constant stream of making donuts. And that's a very fond memory because she was a great nurturer. And it was fun because she tolerated that. And so it's all bound up in your, how you relate to your kids. And we still enjoy cooking together. And those recipes are, they're meant to, with me in writing them, I pretended like I was talking to Hallie in the kitchen as you do, because that's some of the greatest time that we ever have is we're making something. And with my boys too, they love to cook. And you're having you're chit-chatting about things small and large, and life comes in there. And that's one of the beauties of cooking together and so the recipes are not conventionally written. They're throwing in some little chit-chat or what I might say if I wasn't dead and I was actually there.
Well, I did want to say, I cook with recipes that are very detailed, of a half cup of this. And so the curry recipe was one of the first times I've just been creative in cooking, because I was following your instructions. Add a bunch of onions now and put, I was adding things as you said, and adding to taste the spices to taste, and it was amazing. It was delicious. And I loved, I almost feeling the guidance that came from the way you wrote about it that actually helped me experience a different way of cooking. So, but also writing about chopping onions gives you a reason to cry. And sometimes we need those tears to come out. Hallie, do you make your mom's recipes? Do you cook with any of them?
I do. I actually, before we made the book, I used to call her every once in a while and be like, tell me how to make quiche again. And then she would tell me over the phone. And now I'm like, oh, I have a book. And yeah, I loved that these recipes were included because there is something so powerful about, the food you grew up with is kind of the epitome of comfort, and it is this like real sensory way to I don't know, even like, yeah, when I make a quiche the way that my mom does or something, there's this total like familiarity. And I think the way I cook in general is influenced, and that's a really special and spiritual thing that I think can, even happen when we're all still here. And actually a few years ago, Mom, I hope you don't mind that I share this, but I made the brownies from the book for the first time. And I called my mom and I was like, these are gross. Like, what? I was like, this is not a good recipe. And she was like, well, it's been in the family for a long time. I was like,
it's really not very good, but my mom.
It's not good. Don't make it.
But my mom made that for years because it was really cheap to make. Because I think it used cocoa powder, and and so that's just a straight.
I was surprised. I was surprised because I mean, Mom, I feel like you love chocolate, and you like I don't know. I was like, they're very like sugary and kind of brittle, and you want a brownie to be like deep and chewy and like rich, and this was like, it was like too sugary. And yeah, so I stand by every single other recipe in the book, but if I had tasted those brownies, right. Like if I had tasted the brownies before, I would have said, no, we can't put them in. I don't think a recipe should stay in the family just because it's been in the family for a long time. I actually don't believe in that at all. And I think we need to have some quality control up in here. Anyway, that's my only other comment.
So there we have a brownie disclaimer. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel a little guilty, but my mom made them for so many years, and then she made this pecan pie, which until I worked out the recipe, I go, that's the best food I ever eat. I want to eat it all the time. And then and then I made it after she died, and it was just like, 1,200 pounds of sugar go into like one pecan pie, which is why I just adored it. So that was hers too.
So some traditions we maybe need to alter as we go through time.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
curious. Oh, do we need to wrap up? I had one more.
Go ahead. Just go ahead.
Well, I know you two, you seem to get along very well. Have you always gotten along well? Did you have like a strained teenage years chapter, or do you have any suggestions on getting through mother-daughter struggles?
I was absolutely a brat as a little tween. Had many we lived like really far from like a mall, so it would be like an hour and a half drive to a mall. And I remember we would drive to the mall, and my mom would be like driving to buy me clothes for school, and I'd be like such a little asshole. And I've since been like, God, Mom, sorry I was like that. But again, my mom is just like, whatever, you were a teenager. But actually, one thing that we talked about on our book tour, because I think a lot of people, we didn't want to give an impression like we're like this perfect best friends, like Gilmore Girls, like type of thing. And actually, on our book tour, we somehow, through like sheer stupidity, missed a connecting flight, and it was so stupid. We were like eating like a salad in like a food court of an airport, and just like didn't make our just completely missed our flight. And then
but I had a bagel that was so good I couldn't.
It was not good, Mom. It was not. It was an airport bagel. It was not. I guarantee you, it was not good. And I just remember being so annoyed, and I like laid down on like a bench at the airport, and I was just like, I was so upset. I was like, I will not move. And my mom like took this photo of me like as a whatever I was, like 29-year-old, like having a tantrum in an airport, and we like showed it on our book tour, and we're like, this, we absolutely, I think, part of being close, especially the mother-daughter thing, is like, yeah, you'll drive each other crazy sometimes, and being able to like laugh about that, I think, is a big part of getting through those times, like being able to turn a conflict into a joke. Obviously, if it's like a real thing, like being heard and feeling respectful, but like I do think our shared humor about stuff and being able to be like, I think my mom and I are both okay at being like, yeah, I'm being a total ding dong right now, like and just like being able to laugh at yourself in the context, because I can't help it. Sometimes when we're together, I like become that teenager again, or like, yeah, my mom will put the brownie recipe in, like whatever. So I think laughter, I don't know, Mom, do you have any tips for turbulent times?
It's almost like, doing the book for me really helped bridge the gap between I am the mother and you are the daughter. And that was huge. It was just huge, because it helped me see Hallie. I honestly, until we were sitting, I was writing and she was sketching in this motel room, and we were getting down to the framework of the book. I knew she was an artist. I knew she was talented. Like you all say, your daughter is talented. but I was just stunned to find out that, wow, she is really talented, and she's a professional in her own right who's been doing this. At that time, she'd been doing it for about 7 years, and self-trained artist who has just had an amazing young career. And then it was applied to this thing we were doing together. And I just came, it brought me, I kind of forced me to go out of my role of chief protector responsible for every aspect of her universe into a colleague. And that was a huge transformation for me. And I understood that I had to do it. And although I'm very protective and very mother bearish kind of, but then this new relationship that we have has just been a gift, because I see now that we're both moving together, and the collaboration has been something I never expected. And the collaboration and being able to run your ideas past somebody whose voice you trust and whose sensibility on a project, that's a big deal to work with anyone on a creative project together. But to have her skills and my skills be complementary in the way that they are is just a gift to me. And that's my evolution through this, from the I'm the mother and I'll beat you up if you look cross-eyed at my daughter, to letting her be her actual human self without my interfering. And just now I can appreciate, and that appreciation is just wonderful. It's just been a gift.
And I will say your collaboration is a gift to all of us, because you've created this thing of beauty, the book, What to Do When I'm Gone. I'll remind everyone again. And so I'm talking with Susie Hopkins and Hallie Bateman, who wrote and illustrated this amazing book, What to Do When I'm Gone, which honestly, I think everyone should have it on hand because you may not feel an interest in reading it right now, but having it available, like I did, I found it a couple of years after I got it, and suddenly it was like the perfect thing. So I want to thank Susie and Hallie for joining me, and thank my daughter Gia for being here as a co-host. It's just been so much fun to talk all together as mothers and daughters.
It has been. Thank you for having us.
This has been incredible. Thank you so much for all your questions and for sitting with our book, and just really appreciate getting to have a mother-daughter roundtable.
Exactly.
Yes, it was so nice to meet you both and read your book. I loved it, and I'm keeping it. And even though I have a mom who has shared so much wisdom with me, and I have her podcast to go listen to, and she's I'm still getting so much value out of your beautiful project together. So thank you for creating it, and I hope we can stay in touch as mother-daughter roundtable.
Yes, let's have regular
Absolutely.
roundtables.
Absolutely.
Right.